Welcome everybody to the Training Simplified podcast. I'm Sam. I'm here with Matt. Matt, how you doing?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's been fun. We've had a lot of stuff going on with this people development scorecard coming out. So it's exciting to talk about some of that stuff and keep the conversation going with a bunch of people on a bunch of like 7 areas. And people are talking to us about all of them, which is exciting.
Yes. And I've loved seeing people that we work with like present to their leadership team, and like I see our scorecard in their deck and they simplify people development by just repeating what we've said to them. And it's great. I love it.
It works perfectly. Perfectly. We were having a conversation that we wanted to bring to the podcast that I think is really relevant because it's something that in particular, I think you've become known for in your career, that you've brought to training that people notice right away when they see Training Simplified stuff. And it's interesting. You have become known for like the way that your materials look and the way training looks. Specifically, like you're a video guy by trade who now does everything design, but like your videos look like cinematic movies and your designs and materials look like graphic designers are all over them. And that's unique for training. Like we don't see that a lot in the training world. It feels like that's a unique proposition. I'm curious, like we were talking about it. It was like, well, where does that come from and why? Because I think that's the first shocking thing. Where did you start with it? Like you and I have known each other for a decade or more now. Like you came to this training world with a whole different background, but maybe like, how did you cross over from making this beautiful stuff into the training world, and why did it work, do you think?
Yeah, I remember when I was being interviewed for the training video job at Chipotle. And prior to that, I did a lot of educational content, a lot of documentary storytelling in the educational world. But specifically like training, like operational training was not necessarily always where I'd been, but I was asked a question by you in the interview. You and a guy named Ryan Smith interviewed me. Yeah, I think you started at Chipotle a year before me or something like that.
Yeah.
And you asked me in the interview, you were like, so do you make like cool videos?
It's a very behavioral interview question. Our HR friends are like,
super solid interview skills.
So upset right now. Like he would ask what?
And I was just like, yeah, dude. Yeah, bro. I make cool videos. But I think the heart there is like, we know what's cool. Like we are inundated with media. We are inundated with content constantly. Even 10 years ago, when you asked me that question, we were already being inundated with media and with content. And like a viewer, whether you are watching something on YouTube, whether you're watching something on an LMS, whether you're watching something through your internal comms portal, or in a recruiting video or whatever it might be, you have a certain standard in your mind if you don't even know it. Like if you see something that is just kind of like, it's low quality, it's not engaging, you dismiss it without even necessarily realizing it. So the idea of bringing quality content and good storytelling and just kind of the basics of like what makes something look good and feel good to something like the training world or the communications world just makes all the sense in the world. Because if you don't, people will dismiss it. So it's not about being cool, right? Even though like we want it to be cool, and like that's constantly kind of like, well, is it cool though? It's about literally making it so that people will actually want to watch it. And it's about bringing some of these like elements of filmmaking, elements of storytelling to video content in that world means that your audience will be engaged and they won't instantly dismiss it in the first 10 seconds as just like another dumb training video or whatever it might be.
It's so true because it is like most training departments don't view themselves as like content production teams like you would in the design world or the art world or even the marketing world has all of these departments with specialties. But in reality, like everything you put out in the training world is content. It's media, just like all those departments.
Yeah. And I mean, like, you're marketing to employees is what I've always said, is like, that's why I feel like we want to create marketing level content for employees, because it's the same principles. You're trying to get their attention. You're trying to persuade. You're trying to engage. You're trying to educate. And to do that, you need good content. You need it to be something that people actually want to watch. It should either educate them, entertain them, inspire them in some way. And you do that through good content. And, you mentioned design. I want to throw something out there about that, because a lot of times here's what I hear. And I mean, if anyone out there is listening and you're like a designer and you've ever been in like the corporate world, maybe you can relate to this. But what I would hear from people all the time from like other departments is they would have something that they wanted to bring to a designer on our team. Cause I managed a team that had like video editors, designers, artists, photographers, stuff like that. And they would bring something to our team and they were like, can you guys make this pretty? Can you guys like make it look good? And that just like, I shouldn't take it so personally, but like, it just like rubbed me the wrong way. Cause I'm like, we're not the team that makes it pretty. I think we're the team that makes your thing make sense. Like, I think that if you
100%, yes,
it makes like good design doesn't just make something look good, although it does. Like that's on the base level. You look at something like, oh, that's beautiful, or oh, that's cool. But what it really does, good design makes something make sense, and it makes the viewer, the receiver of that thing able to process it in a way that they'll understand it quickly. And to me, that's literally the point of like training materials. If you're creating like a job aid for somebody in a restaurant of how to use this machine, or how to create a recipe, or how to execute a checklist, even if it's designed well, that means it's good training, because they'll be able to process it quickly. They'll be able to understand it. And that comes from good design. And so using a designer, like a quality designer, whether they're a print designer, a web designer, a graphic designer, to create training materials, actually achieves your objective better of making the learner actually understand it quicker and more effectively. So to me, it just makes all the sense in the world to use good design principles for your training materials.
It does. And it's one of those things that like learning folks, it's not a part of any learning curriculum, is like human-centered design principles, or any design principles for that matter, except instructional design. But what I found fascinating working with you and like a guy named Andrew French really brought a lot of stuff to life. French was amazing at like taking really complicated things. And I was often the victim of like, can you make this look pretty? Like,
right.
Hey, here you go. But what I was really asking you guys to do was like, take out all the unnecessary stuff. And I think what a designer does is looks at it and goes, yeah, I can make it look pretty, but the way that I'm going to make it look pretty is I'm going to delete half of the words that you have there. I'm going to focus on the things that are most important and make sure that the important things are the easiest things to find. Everything else falls back. And so they actually edit and refine and delete and simplify all of the content that you just gave them. And then they put some different fonts and some colors, which is ultimately what people like me end up seeing, which is like,
right.
Oh, it's pretty now. But really, they stripped away all of the nonsense that distracts the learner from doing the thing that you need them to do.
That's right. Because a good designer knows where somebody's eye is going to go and knows how to bring their eye to the right spot. And I love that. And
Same.
Yeah. And again, the learner or the receiver will instantly dismiss something if they get handed a thing and they're just like, what is this? It's like when you get handed a, like it's like having a bad resume, like a poorly formatted resume. We all know like, hey, if you have a better formatted resume, or if it has a little bit of design elements, it's going to just come across better. But if you hand somebody like a resume that's poorly formatted and like doesn't make any sense, they're just going to toss your resume. Right.
That's right. And the same thing happens with websites today. Like we've reached that point in website design where if you go to a website now and it's not responsive and mobile optimized, you kind of just like cringe and exhale. You're just like, oh, like I cannot navigate this thing. I don't even want to try, because the fact that this thing still has those like long oval clicky drop down things, this is going to be a nightmare to operate. And I feel like that's what learners do or employees do when they see like just Word doc or PowerPoint generic things thrown at them. And it's like, I got to sit here for an hour through that. Not exciting. Not exciting at all.
Yeah. You know, I also want to say something that's kind of like important to me that maybe near and dear to my heart is that for anybody out there who, you know, considers themselves a creative, right? Like a designer or a filmmaker or, you know, whatever it might be, a photographer. And I feel like it's easy to look at something, even like a corporate job or a job doing something like training materials or learning development, and feel like you're not fulfilling your like artistic integrity or your artistic vision. Um, I guess I want to say like, yeah, I've been there, and I know what that feels like to kind of be in like a corporate environment and feel like you're an artist, and I want to be doing my art. I want to be creating, and like this is terrible, and I'm working for the man. But there is a way to preserve your artistic integrity and express yourself creatively within the confines of a corporate job, or within the confines of maybe an industry that doesn't feel creative. And if you can find a way to do that, I think that is actually the creativity. if that makes sense. Like, I'm going to use French as another example because he's the best. So he was in a role where he was like the go-to guy for people they would ask him to make PowerPoint decks, right? And like, there was a part of him, he's a graphic designer by trade, he's a great artist, and it was sort of like, okay, I'm making PowerPoints for people, and like, you know, you could, and he knew it, and it was sort of like,
yeah,
okay, and but I feel like he got to this point where he was just kind of zenned out on it a little bit, and kind of like, I'm making PowerPoints, and I'm gonna make them freaking beautiful. People are gonna love them, and when they see one of my PowerPoints, they're gonna be like, oh wow. And more people are going to be like, can you make me, can I get one of those instead, instead of mine? Can I get a French PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Cause they're better. They look cooler. They're on brand. They flow. They make sense because they're well designed. And so he was able to like bring this like level of artistic integrity to something that a lot of people would like roll their eyes at, making PowerPoint, and really able to express himself creatively within the confines of something that a lot of artists would struggle to do, if that makes sense.
It makes so much sense. And I think we've seen in our careers, French's example 1A, and there's 10 others that we've worked with that have crossed over into the training world that have found, because it's hard in the art world to get the satisfaction. You put a piece of art out there and you don't know the reaction of the public, maybe now in social media a little bit more, but you have the beauty of this in the corporate learning world of seeing that immediate reaction. And I agree. I think French found that zen because you do it and people are like, oh man, this is amazing. Or that's beautiful. And you get that reaction.
Yeah.
That feels good. That's like, oh, like it's not the Mona Lisa. I'm not in an art museum, but at the same time, like at least the work I do is valued and appreciated by people. And I'm elevating the work of this brand and this company at the same time. So I do feel like there's something to that there. There's the inverse though, which is there's designers that are really good at coming into the training world. But some of the stuff that I think we've learned over time is like, you can also teach restaurant operators, folks that lived in the restaurant and moved into training, which is a large portion of the training world, and teach them basic design principles, basic camera techniques to look good. Cause it's like, if you're going to make it, even if you're not a creative or an artist, there's simple design or media techniques that you can use to make your stuff look good, because it should just look good by default anyway. Yeah. It's not that hard to learn the basics of this stuff.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's such a valuable point. Like if you are in the training world, if you are creating training materials of any kind, whether print, web, whether it's a SharePoint site or in your LMS, whether it's a Rise course, like learning some basic design skills, learning some basic camera skills, how to frame a shot will pay off in the materials that you're creating 100%.
Absolutely.
And I also love, I mean, even that's along those same lines of like kind of having a creative career within this, like, we just wrapped up this project with Din Tai Fung, this, this brand that They have, I don't know how many locations. They got a bunch of locations now,
It's
but
like
it's fine
16 in the
dining, Chinese
States.
food.
Yeah.
And it's so good. The best dumplings you'll ever have in your life. They're world famous for the xiaolong bao. And we, and we created a new hire orientation for them, which on the surface sounds boring, right?
Yep.
But what was cool is like we were able to bring, and this is not even about, I'm not even saying this to be like, well, look what we were able to do. I'm more saying like, because it was like a fulfilling career moment, right? Of being able to tell their story in like a super cinematic, super engaging documentary style way, tell the story of the Xiaolong Bao, tell the story of their family history, because it was founded by these two brothers who are now the CEOs, founded by their grandfather in Taiwan like 50 years ago. We were able to bring the story to life for employees, for new hires, so that they could connect with the story and connect with the mission and connect with the values. And we did it through super cinematic, dynamic storytelling. And I say that to say, like, again, like you can find a creative career wherever you go and apply your creativity and your creative skills. Because years ago when I was kind of like, oh, this is what I love doing like storytelling, and I love interviewing people and kind of doing a documentary story style storytelling. I wouldn't have thought, oh, doing it for hospitality industry is where I want to go, but it's where we've gone, and it's great, and I love it, and it's beautiful to be able to bring that bring that element into this world, and yeah, it's cool.
Well, I think it just makes sense because there's so many stories in the hospitality world of people doing what they love. They started a concept because they wanted to bring this cuisine from their parents to the world,
Yeah,
or these folks that have like gotten a career. They're now directors or VPs at a brand. And so they believe in the brand because the brand believed in them. And so they want to tell the story of this. And there's all of these like human centered, heartfelt stories in the hospitality industry that deserve to come to life. And when they do, I think what you and I have seen is like the impact on a new hire. Like they're going to get an onboarding no matter what. Dintai had one. It was fine. It was like a very passable onboarding. But they were like, we
yeah,
want to take it to the next level where now, ideally, people watch this and they're like, I had no idea I was joining 5,000 years of tradition and all of this that came along to it. And it like the story compels me to want to do better and be great. As an
yeah,
aside, I showed it to my mom, who was here for, I think it was Nolan's birthday or it was over the holidays. We were doing the demos of it. And she's like, I want to go work at Din Tai Fung. Like she's a retired old engineer. And she's like, I would love to just sit there and make dumplings all day. That sounds amazing. And I'm like, well, then it worked. Like you convinced
yeah.
my mom to go work for Din Tai Fung. Like that's the power of a
Shout out
story.
Sam's mom. Maybe Din Tai's hiring. Yeah, we know we could get you in.
I mean, she's available if anybody needs it. But it's like that's the power of a story is like what training material, one, would you ever want to show your mom? Not many. But two,
Right?
like, I don't know, it compels you to have that kind of a reaction. The fact that people are reacting at all to training materials means
Right.
something is working. And that's what you're looking for. It's designed and it's simple, so it's easy to digest, but it also connects on an emotional level so that people are reacting to it. And it's not just click through, got to get to the other side. They're actually emoting about training material. And that's something I think everybody in our industry would want.
Agreed. I love it. I think that's it.
I think that's it. Well, Matt, we'll keep talking about design, but until next time.
Until next time. Thanks, Sam.